Hi, I'm TS, and today we're going to talk about 1974. I was just a little tyke back then, so I don't remember a lot of these things, but I do remember some lasting effects of some of this stuff. So I just go down through the year and see what we find. 1974 was the year that D&D as a game, Dungeons and Dragons, was released, giving all of my nerd friends something to do on Sunday. The government moved daylight savings time up to January in order to save on energy because we were in an energy crisis. We were either deep in it or we were approaching it. For the same reason, they changed the interstate speed limit to 55 miles an hour, which wouldn't be changed until the 90s, back up to 70. Happy Days and the $6 Million Man premiered on television. The first Ted Bundy victim was found. They wouldn't know that until later, but Patty Hearst was kidnapped and held for ransom, and that is a crazy story. She appeared a couple of months later, apparently under the effect of Stockholm Syndrome, as part of the terrorist group that kidnapped her, and going by the name of Tanya, robbing a bank. It's a crazy story. Look that up. Barbra Streisand had her first #1 hit with The Way We Were. Is that true? I seem to remember she had hits into the... Okay, her first #1 hit. That makes sense. She also subsequently was the first artist to get an EGOT, which is an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony. I think there's only 13 or 14 EGOTs. People with 3 of the 4. There's hundreds of them. But there's only like 13, 14, 15 people. I think John Legend is the newest one to have an EGOT. Jaws was released in the theater, ushering in the age of the blockbuster. Good Times premiered on television, which was a Maude spinoff. Tell me in the comments below if you know of the other Maude spin-offs. Carrie, Stephen King's first novel, was released. Cher split with Sonny Bono, even though they still had a successful TV show and had to act friendly. It had to be interesting. In China, 6,000 terracotta warriors were uncovered. That's a crazy, crazy thing. ABBA won the Eurovision with the song Waterloo, which it's crazy being musical trivia buff. I never knew anything about that. So America-centric that I never even knew what Eurovision was until just like a year or two ago. It's when Måneskin won it and became a worldwide sensation. Duke Ellington passes away. A lot of people consider the greatest jazz musician to ever live. Cleveland instituted a 10-cent beer night, which went horribly wrong. I assume it was at a baseball game, maybe. Is it too early for baseball? I don't know. Sports ball of some kind. The Watergate indictments came down, and a few months later, the book All the President's Men came out. telling the story of all of that brouhaha. The first UPC code came out. Can you tell me what the first product was to have a UPC code? Okay, I'll just tell you. It was Wrigley's Chewing Gum. John Lennon was evicted from the USA in 1974. Events of which are documented in the movie John Lennon versus the United States of America versus John Lennon, or something like that. It's a cool movie, cool documentary. It's a documentary, it's not a movie. Death Wish, the movie, came out. Neil Peart joined Rush. Nixon resigns. The Ramones had their first concert debut at CBGB's. Scientists report that Freon and other CFCs are bad for the environment. Go figure. It'd be another 10 years before they would do anything about banning those things. Charles Lindbergh died at 72 years old. The SR-71 jets, Blackbird or Black Hawk or Snake Hawk or whatever it was called, flew from New York City to London in an hour and 3/4. And it's still a record that has not been broken today. Evel Knievel tried to jump the Snake River Canyon. It's funny how that guy was such a pop culture phenomenon in the 70s. I grew up and he was just, I had the little toy that you rev up and you let it go. And it goes and just like the real Evel Knievel, it barely ever landed any of its jumps. I don't know how that guy was even famous. He doesn't seem like he successfully did any jumps. The Rockford Files, Little House on the Prairie, and Hong Kong Phooey all debuted on television. Premiered, I guess you say premiere on television. Texas Chainsaw Massacre premiered in theaters. The true events that led to the Amityville Horror book and movie took place in Amityville, New York. That was one of the very few books that I read that scared the crap out of me. The Justice Department filed an antitrust lawsuit against the monopoly AT&T, which, like most things with the government, didn't actually, nothing actually come of it for another 10 years or so. Ed Sullivan passed away. That summer was also the Rumble in the Jungle. Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. The first radio transmission was sent into space. Lucy, the first complete prehistoric skeleton, was found. Monty Python's Flying Circus ended. The James Bond movie, I think, was it the first or second Roger Moore James Bond, The Man with the Golden Gun. Jimmy Carter announced his run for presidency, and someone drove a car through the front of the White House. It's kind of crazy that was able to happen then. Now you wouldn't even get close. And finally, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks joined Fleetwood Mac, which we'll talk more about that next year. Other things that happened in 1974 was the invention of the VCR, liposuction, the disposable razor, and the mood ring. It was also a big year for streaking, I guess. Ray Stevens had a song called The Streak. I don't know if the song influenced the rash of streaking or if the streaking influenced the making of the song, but the first streaker getting naked and running across the sports ball field was in 1974, even though people had been doing it on colleges since the 60s or 50s or whatever, but it became kind of a pop culture thing. In the research for this video, I saw a commercial from 1974 for a restaurant called Sambo's. We used to have a Sambo's here in town, and incredibly racist name for a restaurant, which I understand why it went out of business, but the commercial for Sambo's for $1.99 dinners, which it's crazy. You can't even get a drink at a restaurant now for $1.99. Another thing I seem to have deduced from my research was 1974 was a huge year for convenient processed foods. There was like 3 or 4 different things that made cooking easier, and just pop it in a, I guess there was a microwave. Was there? Yeah, microwaves yet? They had microwaves yet? I don't think so. But the processed food started to get really big. All right, let's skip over to movies. Huge year. Was a huge year for Mel Brooks. He had the #1 and the #4 biggest movies that year. Blazing Saddles was #1. I can't believe that was the biggest movie. It's incredibly funny, but slightly problematic. And #4 for Young Frankenstein, which I think is far superior as a movie. But that was a creative peak for Mel Brooks, who is still alive at the filming of this video. Sugarland Express was the directorial debut of Steven Spielberg. Dark Horse was the directorial debut of John Carpenter. We had Zardoz, which was Sean Connery in this weird, sexy outfit in a post-apocalyptic world. Maybe he should have just kept doing James Bond movies. I don't know. I've never seen it, but it looks not great. Speaking of campy and not great, Phantom of the Paradise, which is a strange neo musical with oh shoot, I can't remember the guy's name. It's kind of a take on the Phantom of the Paradise, and it's very, very bizarre. You should look that one up, Phantom of the Paradise. You had The Godfather Part 2, and also between the two Godfathers, Francis Ford Coppola made a movie called The Conversation, which I hadn't seen until just a few years ago, and it is an amazing movie. It's a little slow and a little dry, so if your brain has been tick-tocked and your attention span isn't very long, it might be a hard one to watch, but it is a great movie. Another slow burner from that year was Chinatown. I absolutely love that movie. 1974 was also a good year for the big budget and ensemble disaster movie. You had Towering Inferno with Steve McQueen and Paul Newman? Paul Newman in that? I don't know, there's a bunch of people in it. And Earthquake with whatever, the NRA guy, Moses. What was his name? Charlton Heston. Airport 75, which had a bunch of people in it. I think it was the second or third of the airplane disaster movies. He had a Dracula movie with Jack Palance as Dracula. That had to be a winner. There was also Son of Dracula with Ringo Starr and Harry Nilsson playing Dracula. I'm sure that one was intentionally funny, as opposed to Dracula with Jack Palance, which was probably unintentionally funny. Lenny with Dustin Hoffman. I think I saw that when I was younger, but I didn't know who Lenny Bruce was, and it was a little too serious of a movie for a little kid. I'd love to see it again. The Great Gatsby, which I always thought was one of the great, was under the impression that it was one of the great works of art, but after I saw it, it was just a love triangle kind of. I don't know, I didn't get it. So anyway, that's 1974. That's all I gotta say about that. So I'm out.